So I want to read a quote from And There Was Light. Um, there is no real inner life for a man or a child unless his relation to real things inside and outside himself is a true one. So, one of the themes in this autobiography is that even without visual sight, you can see and feel and perceive very deep things. And Jacques talks about how there were things he could do to increase and decrease his perceptions of the world, and that these were not merely physical things, these were choices he made in terms of the actions he took, and also choices he made in terms of how he viewed the world, obviously in a theoretical way, and how his connection to this inner self. He talks a lot about this, how for folks who can see with their eyes, there's a tendency to lean too much on that and underdevelop this other sense that we all have the capacity to exercise. But the reason I like this quote is that there is something very important about the connection between a person and what's inside of them in order for them to be able to see, really see, accurately see, and perceive the world around them, which includes other people. So this is a theme that you'll see in a lot of the books that I'm writing right now, particularly, for example, in terms of how much our own degree of being in tune with ourselves influences our ability to correctly understand who and what and how Jesus is. And these are things that I think we take for granted or don't think about at all, but it turns out they're critical. And I'll read this again. There's no real inner life for a man or a child unless his relation to real things inside and outside himself is a true one. In other words, there's this alignment question of perception versus reality. Who are you really inside? And how does that differ from this mask you put on with other people? What would you do across all possible situations? And is that your self-perception? Does that accurately reflect what you would actually do in every situation, not just the ones where they're rote and so familiar that you can play this role that isn't really who you are? This comes up later when Jacques goes to the concentration camps. He says, and he was, even at that young of an age, as a 20-year-old, he had already been through many educational experiences. He was very gifted intellectually and was admitted into prestigious opportunities for that sort of thing. And he said that what he learned about humanity in that camp completely contradicted everything he had been taught in school. And he was a philosophy major, so that tells you even more about that. The fact is that who people are in familiar situations differs greatly from how they show themselves to be in situations outside of the norm. But more than that, I think why I'm bringing this quote up is that there is absolute truth in there being a power that comes from how aligned you are in terms of who you think you are and how you actually are, and what you want deep down inside and what you seek for on the outside. And all of those things critically determine, they don't just influence, they determine how much of what's inside of you can flow out to the world and how much of what's really in the world can flow into you. There's this barrier. Our bodies can be either a conduit or a barrier. And more than anything else, what determines which they are and by how much is how aligned we are with how things really are. This can go as deep as you want. So, for example, a lot of people, when they're praying, they even put on a show. And they won't tell God how they actually feel about things because they're embarrassed, because they're angry about this or sad about that, or they want this thing that they don't think they should want, but they do want it. And it's no different than Adam and Eve trying to hide from God in the Garden of Eden. So if you think of him as a physician, he can't heal you unless you come to him. And if you don't tell him your symptoms, how is he going to help you find a cure? So anyway, powerful quote.